And we're also looking at implications for Gwinnett County, because I can see it's, yeah? And the mayor is here. I did that 2 minutes ago, but I will repeat. If anybody needs translation assistance, it is at the table. The local, regional, and national context. So, immigration is a discussion that's near and dear to many people in this room. Our wonderful clients, the sponsors of this project include the City of Norcross, the Gwinnett Village CID, and the Georgia Tech Foundation. And everybody's going to get a chance actually to directly talk with Mayor Johnson and the CID and our nonprofit partners. We have a pretty massive research team, so I'd just like to take a moment to really draw attention to our master's students who are the leaders of this research team at Georgia Tech. Our outreach coordinators include Nazira and Nicole. Nazira has been heading up the outreach to the South Asian community. Nicole has been heading up the outreach to the Vietnamese community. And then our research assistants. And then our partners in this project have been Advancing Justice Atlanta and the Latin American Association. So what we really envisioned with this project was that rather than Georgia Tech coming in and trying to like redo the wheel around what immigration means, we said, you know, we know that there's a really robust community and a lot of strong nonprofit organizations. So we first really reached out to those partners to get this study started. So thank you very much, Latin American Association and Advancing Justice Atlanta. So here's where I'm going to go. I'm going to really just do a portrait of the region, talk about why we need to have this conversation today, and then you guys can have the conversation today. So this is a map of diversity in our Atlanta area. Georgia is 50% white, right? So you kind of aggregate everybody together. Georgia is 50% white. Norcross is 27% white. If you look at the African American population, Georgia is 30%, Norcross is 20%. Asian, Georgia is 3%, Norcross is 13%. Norcross is a truly unique city. Getting to the Latino population, Georgia is 8.8%. This may be something you might expect. 40% of residents in Norcross are Latino. And another thing to really think about is this is a Latino population and an Asian population that is also foreign born. If you combine those, and we actually did the first multi-ethnic study of immigration in Georgia, so we're really looking at Asian and Latino together. It's important to look at these groups together because this is what you understand about the population you need to engage, you know, civically and politically. 1 in 2 people in Norcross are foreign born. 10% of Georgians are foreign born. So when it comes to Norcross and what it looks like to serve a residential population, 1 in 2 people you need are immigrants. But that's a very different context. These are some economic facts. Norcross also really stands out economically, and this is another reason why we chose Norcross. It is an ethnic economy. It's a strong ethnic economy. So this data is outdated, so part of the work of our study was to update this. Georgia has 20% African-American-owned firms, 14% in Norcross. The real standout numbers, though, are Asian-owned firms in Georgia are 5%. Asian-owned firms in Norcross is 22%. That is showing that this is a hub for economic activity. Again, the Hispanic-owned firms rate, 3% in Georgia, triple that in Norcross, 10%. So if you combine those rates together, about 1 in 3 businesses is part of the ethnic economy. So 1 in 2 people that Norcross is working with are foreign born. 1 in 3 businesses that Norcross is working with are going to be immigrant businesses. This is why Norcross is such an important place for us to do this work. So economic census 2007, that's not a great year for the world, 2007. So we did a lot of work with our research team to update this business information. This is another one of the problems that we see in Norcross, and the mayor already knows this, but I just want to reiterate for our audience. Norcross is a very diverse city. It's indicative of where Georgia is going, but it's also an extremely segregated city. So the blue dots up there are dots for white residents. The red dots are dots for Asian residents, and the orange dots are dots for Hispanic residents. So if you look at this, you can really see that the community is sort of segregated into 3 areas. And one of the most segregated groups is the white residents in City Hall. And this is not to judge Norcross for this, because this is a Gwinnett County problem. Gwinnett County is our most diverse county in Georgia, and it's grown mostly through immigration. So you can really see this growth happening, right? 250,000. And a lot of that growth has been among the Latino population, the Asian population, and the Black population. And people don't pay attention to the fact that even though Gwinnett County is our most fastest growing and diverse county, we've also lost some people. And the population that we've lost is white residents. So welcoming America, and thank you, Rachel, for coming today. This is a problem that is an important question for immigrant integration, which is what we're talking about today. What good is it to bring immigrants into a city or county if it's resulting in a very segregated kind of life? If these communities are not communicating, if some communities are just leaving as a choice. So we see this as problems, not just in Norcross, for Gwinnett County, and for Georgia, and actually it's a national question as well. So here is actually really recent data that's talking about where minorities have become the majority between 2000 and 2013. Again, I just want to remind people this is a national conversation. We're not alone in experiencing this, which means that as we create solutions to segregation, to immigrant change, it's a solution that all of us need to be talking about. So of the counties that have most recently become majority-minority, we see Gwinnett County right there. We're part of this very important national story. So these are some of those framing questions that I want to bring us to. There's now 52 welcoming immigrant cities as of this week. Again, we're not alone. Norcross is one of those welcoming cities. We're all trying to figure out what are best policies and practices. 370 local governments have drafted immigrant integration policies, so they're actually taking this data and trying to understand what policies and programs will be helpful for integrating diverse immigrant groups. And this is some other research that I've been working on. Atlanta Metro is actually one of the most popular immigrant destinations, so in terms of raw numbers, we add more immigrants every year, not percentages, raw total numbers. We add more immigrants than LA does. Because in LA and New York and some of these historic destinations, as new immigrants are coming, we're also losing some of the more adapted immigrants. And so this is a question to think about for the future. As integration happens, we don't want to just have new immigrants that come in, but we want to make sure that there's resources that are receiving those new immigrants and that we're developing a maturing population also. So while immigrants do move intra-regionally, and this is a very good sign for Atlanta, unlike the top 7 immigrant destinations, Atlanta has yet to lose any immigrants to other cities. So LA, New York, Chicago, Boston, huge immigrant destinations, they lose immigrants to other cities. Atlanta is receiving some of those immigrants, and so far, we haven't lost any. That's at the regional level. Here is a kind of warning, and the students have also uncovered this with their data. While the region has not lost immigrants, immigrants have moved. So if you look at this, DeKalb and Gwinnett are the two that you should concentrate on. In 1990, the majority of the region's immigrants, 30% of those immigrants, lived in DeKalb County. By 2012, which is the green bar, DeKalb County, and moved into Gwinnett County. And things that have come up in our focus groups are that immigrants are mobile people, right? We all are mobile people. If people feel unwelcome, people will move. So as of yet, we haven't had a net loss in immigration or migration, which is a good sign for the region's robustness. The majority of our population growth in the Atlanta metro area has been from immigrants. But this tells you in greater detail that there is still intra-regional migration patterns that we should be paying attention to as we adopt these policies. So my question at the bottom, how do we craft unifying responses to immigration and link new immigrants with receiving communities more closely? I would say at the sort of scholarship level and policy level as planners at Georgia Tech, we're very interested in seeing communities work together and not just kind of coexisting apart. I think that will be the model that Norcross can present. Here is our very sort of, I won't go too much into this, but we found, we did a lot of data collection. We did Dun & Bradstreet business analysis, reference USA business data, and this is to really compensate for the fact that the economic census is so old. And then we did our average at Plaza Latina, Global Mall, and Hong Kong Supermarket. And we chose those because they're both cultural and economic centers for the community. We did a resident survey and we actually got census level robustness. We got to 1% sample of Norcross residents. Since there's only about 16,000 Norcross residents, that's 160, but you know, 1% sounds pretty good. Street outreach is double that, so we were out on the street, we have a massive team of 15 people, and we got to 335 surveys. So really at random, we discovered that half of the people we met were shoppers and visitors. And those people really were coming from all over the region, sometimes out of state. So really significant information there. Our community partners helped us a lot, and then we did in-depth interviews with everyone who was a stakeholder in this process. So I want to thank all these stakeholders in the process. This is not even including LAA and AAJ, who get special credit, but this is everybody who really talked to us, guided us, and worked with us. The Atlanta Regional Commission shared data. It really helped us have like a launching pad to look at for specific local level information. We talked to 3 churches, 6 chambers of commerce, 10 nonprofit organizations and schools, and we really reached out to a lot of folks here. So and that was the work of this wonderful group of master's students. Now I'm going to move over to one of our researchers, Ryan. And Ryan is going to focus on pull factors for immigrants to Norcross. He's going to talk more specifically about what brings immigrants to Norcross specifically.
So I don't feel comfortable with using the mic. Can everybody hear me? I feel like that's good.
Nope.
No? Okay. I don't know if that was sarcasm. So then I can use the mic. So this starts off with the immigrant story. Before I do this, thank you very much, Anna, for all your guidance throughout the process. She's been great at balancing the level of work that's guided for us and also letting us do the work ourselves and find our own path. So thank you very much. So to begin with, this is the immigrant story that our data tells. Immigrants are attracted to Norcross. They bring business to Norcross. They're here to stay. And Norcross is in a position to be a leader in training for immigrant communities. So to begin with, this quote is, if I were to get this from Alex Lasana from the Christos Community Church. If I were to guess, I would have to say family connections. I don't think there's a lot of job opportunities compared to other places. The population seems to be welcoming. All this is speculation. But the general idea that this is a good place to live. Family relationships and a welcoming environment. While this may be speculation, we designed a survey that tested community preferences and found services that are offered within the Norcross community. Within the survey, we found that people who moved to Norcross, 25% were for job opportunities and 46% were for friends and family. And academic literature backs this up with people who come to, or immigrants who come to different places, have the friends and family who provide for a common culture, a common language. There's a social and economic network that you can be at while you are getting your feet underneath you. And so a quick note is that we had 335 surveys, and of those 166 were residents within the study area of Norcross. So this draw by family brings in a level of clustering that occurs. There's 3 very distinct tracks that are communities that we've seen, as Anna was saying. We have the uppermost community that's predominantly white, and it's 10% of the community. We have the middle region that's below Buford Highway but above I-85. That is 60% of the population, and it's predominantly Hispanic and Asian. And then we have the lower portion of Norcross below I-85 that is about 30% of this study population, and it's Hispanic, predominantly Hispanic. Up top in the highest, or in the northern community, we see that there are predominantly native. Over 80% of the people were born or became naturalized citizens, and they have high incomes, over 100,000, and a low poverty rate. The middle track has is actually over half immigrant, with 52% immigrant, who has a lower income and a pretty high poverty rate. And then below I-85, there is another median income. One note to say about that is that there is roads are creating barriers for interaction between these communities. So our survey showed that while this is the case, this is not the preference. The preference is for recipient community to have 91% of the people surveyed prefer to have a diverse neighborhood, while 51% of the immigrant community prefer to have a diverse community. And so there's a difference in those two numbers, which may be due to the immigrant community already being in a more diverse area, and so lower diversity levels are increasing the demand for diversity. The last portion of that is that the actions are also following up with the preferences, and the fact that 75% of all people surveyed said that they interact with someone of a different race or ethnicity on a daily or weekly basis. So this begins to beg the question of where is this occurring? We did a focus group with over 20 leaders within the different ethnic groups, thanks to Advancing Justice Atlanta and Latin American Association for helping us coordinate with all of that. There's two main takeaways. The activity that we were doing was to, on a map, identify areas that were an asset and also identify areas that were a hazard. Two main takeaways were that the assets far outweighed the hazards, and that the predominant areas for assets for the cultural centers are at shopping centers. And this seems to be where diversity and interaction between different ethnic groups is occurring. The survey says that 71% of people who visit Norcross do so for shopping or eating, and that a little personal anecdote is when we were talking with somebody who was doing the survey, they didn't want to take it because they thought that they were going to throw off the numbers because they were from South Carolina. So there's a really large reach, and they were coming in on a monthly basis to come and shop a Hong Kong supermarket and get all their amenities in one place. And it just goes to show how far the reach for that ethnic community is. And so these are three areas that were identified within the focus group that were very important to both economic and cultural assets. We have Plaza Latina, Global Mall, and Hong Kong Supermarket. To begin with, we can see that the annual sales for these areas are very high. And a note about Global Mall is it's extremely high because there's also a logistics industry that's partnered in with that. So we have considerable sales volume, and we have high occupancies, so there's a demand to be able to get into these areas, or to these shopping centers. And tenants tend to stay for a long time. The average for the tenant length of stay was just under 9 years. And some of the people, our data shows that some of the tenants within Plaza Latina have been there since 1982. These places provide for a great area for entrepreneurs to be able to get a start. Plaza Latina has small stalls for startups and has the customer base already ready for people already coming to those areas. But these are just three examples, and the economic impact of the ethnic community is much larger, as we can see in this area. And my co-researcher, Maddie.
Okay, so the information up here is from the Dun & Bradstreet dataset, which is a proprietary dataset that includes individual information from specific businesses updated on a regular basis. So what we're seeing here are all of the businesses in the Norcross area categorized by the ethnicity of the owner. So green is Hispanic, light blue is Indian, and the white and black is in gray. You can see some of the other ethnicities in there. But one of the most important things we're seeing here is that the business community is a lot more integrated than the residential communities. We're seeing that here, although in the southern region we do see some pockets of ethnically concentrated business areas. According to the Dun & Bradstreet dataset, 27% of businesses in this area are ethnically owned. We also conducted a business survey where we went out to the different commercial centers in the area, also with the help of the nonprofits, and we were able to get 54 establishments to fill out our surveys through that on-the-ground outreach, also through emails through the Chambers of Commerce's and other business organizations. And one of the things we found from the survey was that the most common reason that immigrant businesses came to the area was for the ethnic customer base to co-locate. Another thing we heard about this co-location factor was in an interview with the Indo-American Chamber of Commerce, of which we heard that the existing amenities that the Indian community provides here, drawing even international global companies such as IT firms to the area, to Norcross. So the city and Gwinnett Village CAD have done a great job of being welcoming and supportive to businesses of all ethnicities. This was confirmed in one of our multi-ethnic focus groups, where we heard that Norcross is more business-friendly than other nearby cities, especially for wholesale licensing and zoning, which they find to be very important for supplying the food and retail services. So overall in our survey, we found that businesses were satisfied with city services. Okay, so we found that ethnic businesses in Norcross generate almost $900 million in annual sales and employ over 9,500 people. But it's also worth noting that these business owners appreciate that Norcross has been friendly in ways that other metro cities have not been. And kind of as we talked about in Anna's slides, this population is able to be mobile, and right now they appreciate this sense of community, but that could change. So ethnic businesses make up a large portion of Norcross businesses, but in many ways they're very similar to the overall average. We can see that while different ethnicities have disproportionate presence in some industries, overall they're very similar to Norcross in general. And then Norcross is very similar to Gwinnett in general, showing that this makeup of ethnic businesses allows Norcross to be regionally competitive. Okay, so this chart is also from Dun & Bradstreet data, and in the green we have, the whole chart is years established for current businesses. The green are ethnic businesses and the orange is non-ethnic, and I think the very obvious thing here is that the trends are exactly the same. We've seen this in a lot of different ways. So ethnic businesses are not more transient than other businesses. They come and go for the same reasons as all businesses. Data also showed that their credit ratings were about the same, mostly low risk, across all ethnic and non-ethnic businesses. They own and rent at similar rates, and immigrant businesses wish to grow and stay at similar rates as non-immigrant businesses. Both have had a long-term presence in Norcross. 45% of surveyed businesses have been here for more than 10 years. The Dun & Bradstreet data confirmed this with about a 9-year average for businesses. So many are well established and as successful and stable. The survey showed that 30% of both immigrant and non-immigrant businesses plan to be here in Norcross for 20 years or more. So many of the factors that are causing businesses to stay in the community are also the reasons that residents want to stay in Norcross. In this next portion of the presentation, my colleague Kristen is going to discuss the different aspects of living in Norcross.
Great. So as my colleague Maddie said, many of the factors that are causing businesses to stay in Norcross are also the same reasons that community members are staying. 84% of immigrant residents that we surveyed said that they plan to stay at least 5 years in Norcross. In this portion of our presentation, we will discuss some key aspects of life in Norcross. We hope to paint a picture of what Norcross is doing well, what makes people stay and invest in their communities, and challenges to future development. Immigrants are here to stay, so it's important to invest and plan for them. One area that is vital to the future of the success of these long-term residents are the schools. During our focus group and interviews, we heard several times that people perceive that Norcross schools are getting worse and that they aren't as diverse as they once were. are typically more economically disadvantaged in Norcross. They usually have a higher Hispanic and limited English proficient community and a declining test scores. 10 out of 11 Norcross elementary schools have almost 95% economically disadvantaged students. Our survey also reflected this, as very few of our survey participants said that they moved to Norcross for the schools. The educational pipeline is key to retaining residents and supplying a qualified and educated workforce to the Norcross economy. But something in the pipeline is just not matching up. A great deal of the population begins college, but completion rates are low, especially within the Hispanic community. Almost 1/3 drop out before completing an associate's degree, and Hispanic millennials are not increasing in salaries due to this lack of educational attainment. The immigrant story typically goes that each generation contributes to the next generation's success. We see this pretty clearly in the Asian immigrant community, but clear barriers exist for Hispanic higher educational attainment. For businesses to have a qualified workforce, they need an educated supply of workers. Better access to education would improve the current employment situation. Our business survey said that educational background and vocational training was reflected as a top priority for increasing satisfaction with employees for immigrant businesses. Norcross could strive to maintain its workforce by ensuring adequate housing for its employees. However, when speaking with our community leaders, it became clear that the current housing stock is perceived to be old and unaffordable for the level of quality. Our data backs up this perception. Rents are expensive. Over half of all Norcross residents spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and this is not proportionate in all areas of Norcross, as you can see. In the middle tract, approximately 60% of residents spend more than 30% of their income on housing. Over 2/3 of the units south of Buford Highway are over 15 years old, and approximately 11% of units in Norcross are vacant. But as you can see, this is also not proportionate among all of the areas. Few options for subsidized housing exist within the community for low-income families. Median home values are low south of Buford Highway. So if rents are high and housing prices are low, why don't more people purchase homes? The literature shows that barriers to homeownership for immigrants often include credit history, stability of employment history, and down payment requirements. Alongside schools, workforce, and housing, the transportation network greatly influences the fabric of the city. Businesses locate in Norcross because of its accessibility to Atlanta and Gwinnett County via I-85. However, transportation congestion and aging road infrastructure present problems. 2/3 of our business survey respondents cited more bus and rail service as being the most beneficial infrastructure improvement for their business. Similarly, a survey by the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce found that 63% of likely voters would support expanding MARTA into Gwinnett. Additionally, we found that CID improvements were positively regarded in our focus groups, leading us to consider the impact that partnerships can have upon the community. Connecting the city, nonprofit, and the local community is key to successful engagement. Our community survey shows that 57% of immigrants are actively engaged in religious organizations, 34% are active in their children's schools, and 28% are active in community organizations. These local organizations are already successfully providing a number of services, such as English as a second language classes, assisting individuals in navigating through public resources, and promoting political engagement. Throughout our presentation, we've demonstrated that immigrants are attracted to Norcross and that they bring business and economic impact to the city. By planning for these immigrant communities, Norcross can become a national leader. And I'll have Ryan come back to talk more about that.
We interpret all this data to make Norcross a national leader. And these are just a subset of some of the recommendations. The first would be to augment successful programs and expand upon multi-ethnic groups. There is the Latino Police Academy that we believe could be expanded to be a multi-ethnic police academy. You could add a week or two of civic engagement that introduces the immigrant population to how processes work within the city government, as one of the barriers to feeling empowered within your community is not knowing how to be involved. And there's also an ability to partner with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services to start citizenship corners in public libraries. You could also work with nonprofits to expand LEP access to city services and having more multilingual staff to interact with communities certain days each week. You can do cost sharing and have the Latin American Association work with the city of Norcross to be able to gain access into the city's workings. Right now, Norcross is in a pivotal time where you could brand Norcross as an international gateway. Being between Atlanta and Gwinnett places Norcross at the heart of the immigrant population and can be the gateway city that leads to permanent residence and integrative solutions. The city hosts entrepreneur sessions with successful business leaders that may be outside of downtown Norcross, bring some of the success stories that were in the Hong Kong supermarket and other entrepreneurs into downtown Norcross to give those lessons. And finally, we could create an advisory committee and listen to immigrant voices that do civically participate. And we must remember that immigrants aren't used to always having a voice in the political process. So be sure that their voices are heard when they do speak out. So thank you. This is just a review of where our data led us. And another one of our outreach. And at this point, we can take any questions.
And then we're going to have a panel with Advancing Justice Atlanta, Latin American Association, Mayor Johnson, and and we'll get together and have a more detailed
시장 인터뷰 한번 해보고
The panelists, if you will start making your way up, if we can get the screen taken up, that'd be great. And I want to welcome you here to this really, really great event. And in order to get all of this, a lot of information to take in, we want to have a couple things happen here. We want to talk about what we've heard, what implications that might have, where do we go from here. So we've got 3 experts up here.
이민 스터디를 많이 하고 온 상태고 도착한 다음에 이제 gwinnett 카운티가 아주 크게 이민자들이 많이 사는 카운티잖아요. 그래서 노크로스한테 제가 이제 질문을 보냈어요. 혹시 노크로스 쪽에서 더 자세한 인포메이션이 필요하신지. 메일이 바로 그 다음 날인가 맞다고 이제 우리 도시에 그런 이민자에 대한 질문이 많고 일단은 시티 카운슬에는 통하지가 않는다고. 그래서 제가 그 역할을 하게 됐어요. 그 사이에. 그래서 그 사이에 이제 끼려면 저는 이제 LA에서 온 지 얼마 안 됐으니까 헬렌 김호 Advancing Justice랑 Latin American Association 일단 제가 손을 잡고 이거 같이 할 수 있냐고. 그래서 일단 그 파트너십을 먼저 비영리단체 파트너십을 먼저 잡혀놓고 그 다음에 이제 스터디를 시작했어요. 학생들은 15명이랑 같이 조져대 다 대학원생이에요. 도시계약한
15명.
네.
네. 그러면 지금 아까 보니까 뭐 놀코스 안에 한인 인구수나 저희는 뭐 한국인 코리안에 포커스를 하니까요. 한인 인구수가 어느 정도 되고 지금 거기 그 한인들이 가지고 있는 그 비즈니스의 규모가 어느 정도 되는지.
에이전 비즈니스 안에서 한국 비즈니스들이 두 번째로 제일 많은 비즈니스예요. 첫 번째는 중국 비즈니스고 두 번째는 한국 비즈니스고 세 번째는 월남 비즈니스예요. 그래서 아주 많은 인베스트먼트 하는 편이지만 일단 약간 틀린 거는 노크로스 레지던셜 포퓰레이션을 보면 한국 사람이 별로 없어요. 그래서 아무래도 한국 사람들이 이제 노크로스, 존스크립 그쪽으로 가지만 비즈니스 하기는 되게 좋게 보는 도시예요. 그래서 아직까지는 많이 이제 투자를 하고 한국 비즈니스랑 이제 인터뷰를 했어요. 카가도 거기 노크로스에 있고 그래서 한국 비즈니스 사람들이랑 물어보니까 노크로스가 일단 홀세일 같은 인더스트리에 되게 프렌들리하고 그리고 계속 이제 앞으로도 노크로스 쪽에 비즈니스 하기 좋고.
지금 그러면 한인의 그 비즈니스가 사실 그 도라벨 쪽에서 노크로스 쪽으로 왔고
네,
그리고
맞아요.
두루스 쪽으로도 많이 올라가잖아요.
네, 네, 네.
지금 증가하고 있는 추세인가요? 아니면 뭐 조금 많이 비즈니스가 빠져나간다거나.
증가?
그러니까 increase. 그러니까 number of 그 비즈니스가 increase. Korean 비즈니스가.
그러니까 이렇게 지금이 2007년도랑 비슷해요. 근데 그 사이에 많이 줄여졌다가 요즘 다시 올라가는 중이에요.
그 이유가 뭐 밝혀진 게 있을까요?
일단 economically widely 보면 노크로스가 되게 매력적이고요. 많은 비즈니스가. 왜냐면 비즈니스 프렌들리 폴리시가 많고 그리고 노크로스 특이한 게 gwynedd 빌리지 CID가 바로 그 노크로스 안에 있잖아요. 그래서 노크로스보다도 더 CID가 되게 도움이 많이 된다는 걸 들었고요. CID는 뭐 한국에서 전화를 해도 그분이 바로 이렇게 연락을 드린다. 그러니까 the response rate is very quick. 아마 CID 역할 때문에 노크로스가 아직 그 인터내셔널 비즈니스에도 되게 attractive하게 된 거고요. 그리고 그 조지아에서 홀세일 쪽하고 administrative services 그러면 옛날처럼 이렇게 빌딩 그런 거 말고요. 약간 white collar 쪽으로 지금 많이 변화가고 있어요, 조지아가. 근데 똑같이 그 동양 비즈니스가 그쪽으로 좀 투자를 하는 것 같아요. 그래서 그것도 조닝이 이제 매뉴팩처링이 많이 갔으니까 이제 다른 인더스트리도 한국 비즈니스.
오피스에서 일하는.
네, 오피스 일이 많이 늘어졌어요. 한국 비즈니스 안에서도 오피스 일이 많이 늘어졌고.
오늘 그 말씀하셨던 것 중에서 가장 좀 티핑 포인트라고 하신다면 뭐 어떤 게 있을까요? 한인 뭐 immigrants 그 넘버이 놀코스에서 큰 비중을 차지한다든지 그래서 우리 놀코스가 잘 지켜보고 있다는 그런
일단 놀코스는 두 분을 만나면 한 명이 이민자다. 그게 되게 큰 중요한 거고 그리고 이제 둘루스나 존스크립도 변화가면서 놀코스에서 지금 약간 더 오래된 상황이니까 그게 이제 도시에서 어떻게 하는 행동 그거를 좀 지켜봐서 딜루스에도 헬렌
네, Mr. Ho.
그러니까 이제 한국 사람들도 아무래도 거의 다 이민자들이니까 이민자한테 얼만큼 웰커밍하는 카운티와 주가 되는지 우리한테 가장 가까운 일이고요. 그리고 많이 얘기는 안 했지만 불법
체류자?
네. 한국 사람들이 아무래도 그런 분이 많아요. 근데 그런 분이 많으면서도 그 다카다파 신청을 제일 안 하는 그룹으로 들어가요. 그래서 이 조지아는 또 특히 불법 체류자.
Illegal immigrants.
네.
네.
I use undocumented, but
Undocumented.
불법 체류자 조지아가 특히 이제 캘리포니아랑 비교하면 특히 되게 나빠요 살기. 그래서 이 작은 도시에서 이 큰 카운티에서 그 다음에 그 위에는 주에서 어떻게 팔러시를 변화가는 게 우리한테 되게 가까운 얘기죠.
지금 사실 그 릴린 웹 여기 파크가 있잖아요.
네.
그 앞에 그 부지를 두고 지난주에 뭐 투표를 했다고 들었어요. 보수를 해서 이제 시리가 이걸 갖게 됐다고
네.
컨트롤할 거라는
네.
걸 들었는데
네.
거기에 대해서는 뭐 아시는 게 없으실까요?
플라자 라티나 얘기하는 거요?
네네. 플라자
예,
라티나
제가
파크 있고.
예. 그러니까 그거는 제가 뭐 도시에서 더 자세히 안서를 드리겠지만 제 생각에는 한국 사람들이 오기 전에 월남 사람들이 오기 전에 라티노 분들이 일단 처음으로 이민자 비즈니스를 차려놨어요. 그리고 플라자 라티나 경우에는 아주 작은 비즈니스, 이렇게 은행한테 이제 론 받기 힘들 때 그런 도움을 많이 했어요. 그래서 되게 역사적인 플라자이기 때문에 아무래도 라티노 분들한테는 아주 중요한 건물로 보여요.
네. 그러면 지금 노크로스에서 저 메이어한테도 묻겠지만
네.
어떤 개발이 이루어지고 이민자들을 위해서 어떻게 프렌들리한 예를 들어서 폴리시가 어떤 게 만들어질 수 있을까?
그래서 우리가 일단 추천하는 거는 작은 도시에서 permanently 한국말 하는 스태프를 갖다 놔라, 스페니쉬말 하는 스태프를 여러 가지 랭귀지가 있는데 다 할 수는 없잖아요. 그래서 아무래도 이렇게 비영리 단체가 이미 하는 일이기 때문에 같이 일해서 이렇게 한 달에 한 2번이라도 Korean Business Seminar 그런 거를 비영리 단체랑 힘을 합쳐서 이 날에는 우리 시리홀 안에서 이런 서비스 필요하면 한국말 하는 분이 있다. 그런 베이직 미니멈 엔게이지먼트도 아주 큰 도움이 될 것 같아요. 왜냐면 지금 15,000명만 사는 도시라 이렇게 크게 10 staff that speak 10 languages 그렇게까지는 제가 recommend 안 하고요. 일단 할 수 있는 거는 Spanish language outreach, Korean language outreach, Vietnamese language outreach, Chinese language outreach 그 4가지만 해도 거의 다 거기 안에 캡처이 되는 거죠. 비즈니스 커뮤니티하고 리더 커뮤니티.
지금 노크로스 그러면 population이 15,000,
16,000.
16,000이 되는 거고
예.
그 중에서 Asian immigrants 그 minority 그 인구가 반 정도
반이에요.
거의
예.
반 정도.
그리고 동양 사람은 13%.
13.
네.
네, 알겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Well, it's really good to get more definitive information. We've had a lot of general information, we see a lot of numbers, but it's sometimes hard to know what those numbers mean, what the implications are. So the nice thing about this is it really has some personal insights as to what people are feeling, and I think they feel pretty welcome here. There's more immigrants than I thought there were in terms of not native born. More people want to stay here for 5 years than I knew. And sometimes it can be a pretty transitional area that people come in because they're friends and family and then move on to another area. But it sounds like more and more people want to put down roots here, which I think is a very positive message.
Okay, so you've been recognized about the population of the immigrants, right? But what do you want to say to coming immigrant, like welcome?
Well, whenever you come into a society, you can either take away from that society or you can add to that society. So what we would say is we want you to come in and build a better place as opposed to just passing through here or not have impact. So we want you to get involved in a way that you feel comfortable doing to make it all a better place. We getting to know people, it adds to the richness. I decided to move to Norcross because Norcross wasn't just a community of people who looked just like me. I mean, I think that's very interesting to meet people from all over the world. And I travel the world, but it's nice when I don't have to travel very far and meet people from all over the world. So I mean, it makes for a much more interesting community.
So what do you think what is a good thing about the city of Norcross? I mean, you're a mayor, so I'm pretty sure you have so many good things about Norcross.
I don't know if you got enough room on that page to tell you. No, Norcross, the thing that if you on our website there's a document called the Imagination Proclamation. When we did some of that research on that, it showed that the Norcross community was a very tolerant community. and we've become a welcoming city, and we really work hard to help people know what the rules of the city are, but yet we also encourage people to get involved at whatever level that some people want to get involved with parks, some people want to get involved with planning, and whatever. We've got 10 or 11 committees where people inform us. The more good information that we have, the better decisions we make. If we don't know, we can't make a decision based on that.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah.